Everyone, thank you so much for joining us this evening. I'm Deirdre Mendez. I'm the director of the Center for Global Business. We're delighted that you're here. We have a very special speaker here with us for our Global Impact Speaker Series. Dr. Vijay Mahajan is the John P. Harbin Centennial Chair in Business at McCombs in the Department of Marketing. So that must be a lot to memorize, Vijay, even just to know your own title. But he's had that title for quite a while because Vijay is a very acclaimed professor at UT. And actually, more than 20 years ago, he began writing on the market potential of developing countries. And so he's been working on this subject for more than 2 decades now. And since then, he's written 5 books on this topic about different aspects of marketing and selling to those regions, and also about the regions themselves. And there will be a new one out in a few months. This evening, he's going to tell us about the opportunities of marketing to the 86% of the world's consumers who live in developing countries, which is a region also known, a population referred to as inhabiting the global South. So Vijay, I know that you have a presentation prepared for us, so I'm going to get that queued up. Welcome, and thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Oh, thank you so much. It's an honor to be there, and good evening, everybody. I'm glad that you could join us.
Let's get your slides set. All right.
Okay, so this is the second one. Can we go to the first one, the title? Yeah. Okay, so thank you so much. It says Rethinking the Global South. So the key word there is Global South, and trust me, until 20 years ago, I did not know anything about it either. I've been in this country for many decades, and I would say that I've been treated very well by my colleagues and by the private sector, and consulting with many companies. But something 20 years ago, something very strange happened to me, and that's what I'm going to share with you, how that changed my whole trajectory in terms of how I think about the consumer markets. Next slide, please. So there are 5 things, 5 points I'm going to make today, but I'm not going to tell you those 5 in advance. So I'm going to tell you one by one. So the first point that I'm going to make there is what is Global South? So that means that I have to give you a definition. That means I have to tell you why 86% of the world population lives there. And then I have to tell you, so what is the difference between Global South and Global North? So next slide, please. So my story started about 2 decades ago. Most of my academic research, I won't say most, but majority of my academic research are something we call diffusion of innovation, which means that how the things grow over time. So you probably have heard that every market we have innovators, then we have early adopters, and so on and so forth. We also have laggards. So my work was actually more analytical, meaning that can we actually develop models to actually develop a trajectory of how a product will grow over time, a kind of life cycle, if you will. Most of the applications of this work has been the patent violation cases, where somebody steals your patent and you introduce a product, and they want to find out how much sales they have lost because of that. So how do you estimate that? So trust me, I was very happy. This got a lot of attention for me, and I also wrote some books, and some of these books did very well, and they're still available. And then I was asked to come and make a presentation to a think tank in New Delhi. And at the end of the presentation, they told me, Professor, we love you. You're a very great guy, but none of the models that you have developed work in India. Now, keep in mind that this is about more than 2 decades ago. And needless to say, I was very upset that I had spent 25, 30 years of my life working on this. And because of this work, I got all the attention and even got the chair at the University of Texas. And even before that, a chair before I came here. And then I started soul searching why my this work was not working. So what I found out there is that I was living in an economy which is more demand driven, and we don't have any supply constraints until the COVID came. Then there was a supply constraint. And so then we actually published another paper with my co-author, who was faculty member at that time at the Tel Aviv University. And so we actually demonstrated that why these models won't work when you have supply constraints. Then something else happened to me. Next slide, please. So after this experience, next slide. Yeah, next slide. Yeah. So next slide that I'm going to show you something else happened to me, and here I want you to pay attention something I have in the parentheses. It says navigating across centuries. So this is the first point about Global South, that these countries are navigating across centuries. What do I mean by that? By that, I mean there is on one hand, they are really doing very well on the technology. For example, if you look at Kenya, they are just remarkable how they use the mobile phones to make any payments. And then at the same time, they are solving the problems that we had solved in this country, for example, a century ago, and even before that. So this is where my second story started. This is an Indian school of business, which was started in the city of Hyderabad, which is a beautiful city. From the name itself, that you can tell that these were the people who had come from outside, and in fact, the story is that design of this city was actually copied from the city of Shiraz in Iran, and it's a beautiful city. And in this beautiful city, we were asked to set up this Indian School of Business, which now 20 years later has become the top five best schools in the world. And so at that time, when I went there, I was the first academic dean. There was hardly any faculty. We had only first batch of the students, about 70 of them. And so when I landed there, I couldn't believe that what a beautiful building we had. And this building was designed by an architect, and he was selected after a competition. And it's an amazing building, a lot of light everywhere, so it's really take advantage of the climate in the area. And if you see, there are a lot of the lawns there, and at the back on your left hand side was actually the center, where we have a swimming pool and so many other activities, and also the two dormitories. On the right hand side was actually a facility for our executive education. And so it was amazing building. And so I was quite excited. And part of my the arrangement was that my family could visit me twice a year. And so my children came, and so we were having dinner, and my daughter kind of saved the planet type lady, that she's grown up now, but she's very sensitive to these kind of things. So what happens here is that at the dinner conversation, my daughter says, that, Dad, you have such a beautiful lawn. And I noticed that there are people who takes care of this lawn, and majority of them are the females. And so if they have to go to a toilet, where do they go? So I kind of got mad. I said, this whole place is so empty, so that they can go any place. I mean, there's nobody here. There's so many toilets we have all over the place. So then she didn't ask me any questions. So I went next morning to my colleagues, and I asked them the same question. They were all silent. And so then I found the answer. Answer there was that none of them was actually using our toilets. They were actually going behind the trees and behind the rocks. So this was quite interesting to me. Here we were trying to develop a global school. So in the morning, I used to have a conversation with my colleagues how to start a digital library, because we were convinced that we cannot compete with the Texases and the Emorys and the Whartons and the Harvards and the Stanfords. No way we can actually get all the books and the journals from the United States or wherever they were from. We have to go the digital route. And so that's the one century. That is, we're trying to really take advantage of the technology. And then the other century was the toilets. So my first project, and I did not get the permission from my board. And so what we did is I asked my team, how much money can I spend on my own? And they gave me a number. I said, can we build the toilets for these people? And they said, yes. So if you look at on the corner, left corner of this building, so there is a driveway, And so right there, we actually opened a toilet for the use of the people who were working there. And I took a promise from them that they won't go behind the trees and the stones. Then my daughter asked me the second question. If they have to go for their lunch, where do they go? So again, the same question. They go behind the trees and they go behind the stones. So then I had to build the separate dining area, not a separate dining area. I built a dining area right behind our dining area, which looked exactly like us. So the reason that I told you this story there is that this story really opened my eyes that how could I develop a global school here when I was really navigating across the centuries? How can I tell somebody that I have a global school where people even don't use our toilets? Most of them were coming from the rural areas. And so that really got me thinking. Then I started looking around. Next slide, please. So here at the same time, when I was collecting my thoughts, there was a very interesting movie released in India called Toilet, a love story. So this was a true story based on a true story where the boy actually in a rural area, semi-rural area, meets a very beautiful lady who was educated. Both of them were using mobile phones, which is also very interesting. And so that they get married, and the boy made a promise to the girl that he will actually they will have a toilet, but they didn't. Then she threatened him and she left him. So the whole movie is very comedy. It's a kind of, they say, love story. I won't show you this video, but if you get a chance, you should look at that. So this was also showing that how this the country like India are navigating across a century, because in this country we saw the toilet problem long time ago. And then on the right hand side is also very interesting. So which says there is that the Google team has developed an app that if you're looking for a toilet, it will tell you where to go. So this is also very interesting, the technology and the toilet connection that you see. Next slide, please. So this was also really amazing. I did not know this, that Bill Gates was the biggest proponent of actually the toilets. And so the close to 2.5 or 3 billion people on this planet do not have access to the toilet. And this picture that you see and the jar that you see, that's actual poop. So he actually took this poop in a exhibition in China, in Beijing or Shanghai, and told the people what a big problem we have. And Gates Foundation, one of their mission was actually to really develop the toilet. Then on the other hand, that you see there, Toto, which we have, these are the small toilets. So these are the toilets that when you're sitting on your throne, they can analyze everything. And they can tell you, and they can even send the data to your doctor if you have the right connection. New one even have an internet connection. So this is again, the question there was, are we living in two different worlds? Next slide, please. So this is also very interesting. The last month, the India became the global leader in terms of the sanitation and sustainable urban development. And so it turns out that India was not the only one that has the toilet problem. This is all over in Asia and the Africa and even some of the Central American countries. And so you can see there that India wants to position themselves as sanitation leader, which is the bullet one. And number three, behavior change. How do you bring the behavior change in the people so they start using the toilets? And they have this annual competition. So I don't know if you read the newspaper this morning or heard the news. Right now, they are having the global conference in New Delhi right now on AI. So imagine that just 3 months ago, they had a conference on toilet, and this in February, they're having a conference on AI. So this is again what I mean by navigating across a century. Next slide, please. So this data actually I had collected during the COVID time for my last book, a Digital Leapfrog. And during the COVID time, it's very interesting, and the date is given there. The what you see there is almost in all the social media, India was either number one or number two. So Facebook or WhatsApp, Instagram, they were number two. So they're the major users of social media. Then the question there is, how about the toilet? Next slide. And during the COVID time, it was also very interesting. So I want you to look at the second bullet there. It said, despite several security issue related warning, Zoom has become the most downloaded app with India taking 80. So almost 20% of the downloads during the COVID of the Zoom happened in India. So that tells you exactly how they're going to a technology side and still dealing with the sanitation and the toilet issues. Next slide. So that was my point number one. that these countries are navigating across the centuries. So I started to see if there's any literature. The only book that I could find was actually a professor, very well-known professor at the University of Texas, Walt Rostow, who was the chairperson of the Economic Advisory Committee at Vijay. And after he finished his term, he came to Austin, and that's when I had met him actually back in the 1990s. He's the only one who had written a book which talks about how the countries grow over time. That is the life cycle of a country. So imagine the first one would be where people don't have much, and the last one would be that they reach the stage where United States is. So the United States we know fits quite at the top. India we don't know where it is. China we know that it is somewhere in the middle. So, but he does not tell you exactly when this stage happens. Traditional society take the precondition for takeoff, drive to maturity, age of mass consumption, where we are right now in this country and the European Union and other the global North countries. But he doesn't tell you. But this was a really a very interesting book. If you get a chance, it's 1960, but it has been reprinted, translated. It's an amazing book to see how the countries grow over time. So that was the beginning for me. Next slide. But I still did not know how to define who's a developed and who's not developed. So I came across a very nice book called Triad Power, written by Kenichi Omaha, who had studied at MIT, PhD in physics. He went back to Japan and he became head of the McKinsey company, and he wrote some very influential books. So this book he has written back in 1980s when Japan had just become a developed nation, and the book is called Triad Power. Triad Power means that book talks about how Japan, the Western Europe, and North America, they would be really it would be the major players. And he had used the definition. This is my second point now. He had used the definition of the GDP per capita of 10,000 US dollars. GDP being gross domestic product. When a country achieves the GDP per capita of 10,000, it becomes a developed nation. So that's my second point of the presentation. Next slide. So in the process, I landed up writing 5 books. So far I have traveled to 70 or 80 different countries. I won't bore you. Don't buy it because the probability is very high that somebody has copied that. You'll be able to find that on the internet. There are a lot of the videos, and so if it is of interest to you, my first one was 86% solution. So that was the first book that I wrote, conceptualizing why global not 86%, because the 86% of the world population at that time was living in the countries where the GDP per capita was less than $10,000. So then I had to conceptualize the what is the difference? What strategy do we need to change? Next slide. So let me tell you about us. So I kind of got very curious some years ago that what's going on this campus? Do we really pay attention to the global south? So the Texas Global was very kind to me. They had given me data for 2024 and 2025 also. So I'll be analyzing that data. So they gave me the enrollment data for 2023, and using the definition that I just showed you, I was really, really amazed and very happy also that we have students here. There are total 130 countries represented on this campus. So we are really a global campus. And a split is half-half. 60 of those were from global south and 60 of them were global north. And the global north actually looks a little bit higher. That's because by this time, China had crossed that GDP per capita of 10,000 and India was still low. So that's why majority of the students that you see in global south are from India. But this was, and there was no strategy. I don't think there was a strategy on the campus that we have to have people from global south or global north. It's just student apply, the faculty looks at their applications and they admit the students. So this is really a global campus in every sense of the word. Next slide. These are the countries. I won't bore you with those which countries are on the campus from global south and global north. But you are very welcome to ask Deidra to give you a copy of my presentation and you can look at those. Next slide. No, so what does that mean practically speaking? So then a few years ago, Modi made a very interesting statement. And this statement was made in 2022 when the GDP per capita of India was around about $2,400. So he said, I want India to be a developed country in 25 years. I looked at that, I said, oh my God, these guys, how can they go from 2,400 to 10,000, but I knew China was doing it. Okay. And by the way, the definition that I gave you of 10,000 GDP is not been any different from the World Bank definition. World Bank actually has many different categories. And so they actually call the global north, the starting with the high income countries, they call it 13,205. But I stuck with 10,000 US dollars. So let me show you what I did with this statement. Next slide. So this is India GDP, how it is growing over time. It's a phenomenal. And at that time when he made the statement, the GDP per capita was 2,410. So now the question there is, can the India get to 10,000? Who knows? I mean, there's a lot of geopolitical issues which are going on, the trade issues, and there could be another COVID. But I thought, let me look at what other countries have managed to do that. Next slide. So the first example that I'm going to show you there is a country that really after the World War managed to do that was Japan. So if you look at the Japan, and I looked at the point, this is the GDP growth over, and you can see ups and down. Even right now, their economy is down, and you can see they go up and they go down. And so what I would like you to do there is pay attention to the tagline at the bottom, because the tagline will tell you how long it took. So Japan took 14 years to reach a GDP per capita of 10,000 US dollars from where the India is right now, 2,410. So that's interesting. So this is a message for the Indians that the look at Japan and see how they did that. Next slide. This is South Korea, by the way. And by the way, Japan was the first one, and everybody started copying the Japan. What they did, for example, they had a World Cup, they had an Olympic. So what else did they do? So everybody started copying actually what the Japan was doing. So here, if you will look at that, South Korea also managed to do that in 15 years, from where the India was in 2022. Next slide. This is Singapore. So Singapore also interesting, and if you look at my tagline at the bottom, also managed to do that in 15 years. I personally give the credit to Lee Kuan Yew. This is the book. This is the most fascinating. If you want to read one book about how to become a developed nation, this is the book. From the third word to the first word, and then he has the second book, which I did not enjoy that much. But this book was really amazing. That how he changed the whole country and made that country a developed nation. Next slide. This is China. So China is a very recent entry. And so notice there it says that 12 years. That means that the Chinese were 12 years ago at the same point where India was in 2022. So no, the question there is that what did the Chinese do? And I'll comment on that, but I think that all these are stories for a lot of these developing countries that it can be done. Next slide. This is Russia. The reason I showed this Russia there is that when I started this, the Russia, I did not consider Russia as a developed nation because they go up and down. They go up and down. And Russia took 15 years from where they were, where the India was in 2022, and still their economy is not stable. So you can see that they go up and down and up and down. So next slide. And this is the Mexico. The reason I show Mexico there is that a lot of my consulting used to be in Mexico until until I stopped it and started traveling to other countries. But Mexico is working very hard. So you can see they go up and down, up and down, up and down. And it took them 29 years to actually reach the point of the 10,000 US dollars very recently. And I don't know if they can stay there or not. So Mexico, Malaysia, and Turkey are kind of going up and down, up and down. But I'm optimistic. I think that they can sustain that. But they managed to do that in 29 years. This is the longest among all the countries that I have shown you. Next slide. So this is my the third point now. My third point there is that what was wrong with me? Why my daughter, who was born in Philadelphia, went to school in Austin, Texas. She was not a student at the University of Texas at that time, but she went to Plant 2. She had gone to the Central America when she was 16 through a church group to build toilets there. And then I used to drop her in East Austin. She was teaching English to the recent immigrants. And in the process, she was actually practicing her Spanish. So I said, how come she actually figured that out And I came from India in 1971 when there was hardly anything there. I grew up in a house where there was an open toilet. There was no 24-hour water that used to come only 2 or 3 hours a day. We had 3 room or 4 room, and there were 14 of us living there. So why can't I do that? So then I realized that what has happened to me, my global north was bigger homes, richer, and urban. These were the three critical things that have happened to me, which has totally changed the way I think, the way I teach marketing. So I'm going to highlight each one of you. So this is my third point, takeaway point today. So go to the next slide. First of all, this graph is a little bit old, but the message is not. So I want you to look at the bottom, the what you call the blue line. So blue line tells you how, and you have to read it on the left-hand side. Blue line tells you how the size of the houses in this country grew over time. I came here in 1970 when the average size of the house in this country was about the 1,800 square feet. This is in 1971. So my professors and my teachers and my friends whose parents were living in Houston, Texas, average size was 1,800 square feet. Now, if you look at that in just 20, 30 years, the average size of the house is in the 2,700 square feet. And at the same time, I want you to look at the bottom curve, but you have to read it on the right-hand side, which tells you how many people are living in the house. So there are only the less than about 2.1 persons are living in a house, as compared to what it used to be when I came to this country. So there are less number of people staying there, but houses are getting bigger. That means buy one, get one free. You have two-car garage, so you have to have two-car garage. You probably have 2 or 3 or 4 different television. You have a whole bunch of mobile phones. So a lot of our marketing was driven here, inventory control, promotions, the pantry size of the pantries, packaging size was driven by this graph that you see. How our sizes actually grew over time. How many cats you have, how many dogs that you have. Next slide. And I hate to admit that this is where I live. This is the Westlake Hills. Only reason we live here is because when we came here in 1990s, we were told that this is the best school district, which we later found out that if we have waited, we could have gone to the Round Rock or the many other very, very good school districts now. And so I hate to tell you what is the size of the house where I live, and I hate to tell you how many people live. Only thing I can tell you there is our children are grown up. So you can guess from there. So this is really amazing that this is where I was coming from. Next slide. So now how rich are we? So this data, we're updating it because the new data, the World Bank published our new data. So this is 2022. So GDP of the whole world is about 100 trillion. I'm sure you have heard this before. The GDP of the United States is about 25.46 trillion. That means 1/4 of the world GDP is in the United States. So you can see why we can flex our muscle. We are the richest country, but that's not interesting. Question there is that what is our population? So when you look at the next item there, population 335 million, we are only 4.23% of the world population. We are about 4% of the world population, and we control 25% of world GDP. But that's not even interesting. The last point is the interesting point. So you can get this data that what percentage of the U.S. economy is controlled by the consumers, meaning people like you and me. How much we spend, what do we buy, and it includes everything that we do. So that's called household consumption. And what that also means there is that if the country is totally controlled by the government, then this number will be less. But for the United States, it's 67%. So no wonder our economy is market driven. When you look at the commercials, $17 trillion, everybody on this planet wants to sell their product to us because we are the richest. And money that we consumers spend, 4% spend, is even bigger than the economy of China, as a matter of fact, next 4 or 5 different countries. Next slide. So this is a big deal. Let's compare that to when I was at the ISP in Hyderabad. So this is interesting to see that 5 Indian states have a GDP higher than Austin. None has higher than Houston. So there is no state in India, including Maharashtra, where the Bollywood is, They don't have an economy bigger than Houston, a population much larger than Houston. Where our prime minister comes from, Gujarat, they don't have an economy bigger than Houston. Karnataka, the high-tech city where Bengaluru is, they don't have an economy bigger than the Houston. And my state, where I was born and raised, Jammu and Kashmir, I don't want to even talk about that. That it's only 26 the billion, the much less than Austin. Austin is about the about 220 20 billion. And so notice that no wonder that my daughter could see those, that the difference between the technology and the toilet, because that state, where I was there, the Andhra Pradesh, that's not even listed here. So their economy is even less than Austin, where the Hyderabad was. Next slide. This is again kind of redundant slide, but I just wanted to show you, since I was coming from Texas. So GDP, GDP Texas is 30. It was 30 times more than India, almost about 25, 30 times more. So that's how the difference was in my mindset, the how I had changed. Next slide. Then I also want to showcase here my favorite, the region, Africa. And so I have traveled very extensively. So I wrote about this also. My Africa Rising book got a lot of attention. And I was very proud of that book because I told a very positive story. There also, if you'll notice there, only 3 countries in Africa have economy higher than Austin. Can you believe that? So my favorite country, Morocco, their economy is less than Austin. And none of them has higher than Houston. Even countries like Nigeria and South Africa, Nigeria with all the oil they have. So you can see that the largest country, which is India, I showed you, and the largest continent, which Africa I showed you, that how the difference is between the global north and global south. So next thing that I want to show you, the last point was that we are urbanized. The next slide, please. And I want you to pay attention to first this chart that you see here, the line. This line actually shows you how the United States urbanized over time. And by the way, when I came here as a student, Austin was not supposed to be an urban center. In fact, population was about 100, 150,000, very campus town. The first shopping mall we have is the Highland Mall on Airport Boulevard. If you would go to the Sears store at that time, they did not have any appliances there. They would show you a catalog, and you will look at the catalog, and then you could order what you want. So Austin was not a very big town at that time. So urbanized, what you see there is the United States right now is 81% urbanized. So I want you to look at the top table. So if you look at the top table, India right now is about 33% urbanized. And so this is where the United States was 1880. So think for a moment. So India is where the United States was in 1880. So let's look at China. China, which is the second column, their urbanization is about 58, 60%. This is where the United States was in 1940. So you can see what a mindset change you will have, because I was going from an urbanized city. I've been in Austin for many years. I just left for about 13, 14 years. There was no there were no Korean restaurants, any Asian restaurants, no hot tea, I mean, nothing. I mean, I starved. I was a vegetarian. I starved. There was only one Indian grocery store in Houston, Texas. So there was only 13, 14, there were only 70 students. There were 13, 14 married couple. They used to go to Houston. They have opened the first grocery store. So this is how long this Austin has come. So I can also trace the history of Austin here. But noticed here that many of these global South countries, except for Brazil, Brazil is more urbanized than us. As a matter of fact, many of the countries in South America are more urbanized, like Mexico and Brazil, and they're more urbanized than the United States. But the rest of the global South, Africa, Asia, you can see that they are very, very super rural. And rural had implications, meaning that you won't have access to the electricity, you may not have, or you will have a hard time, you may not have access to the healthcare, education, so on and so forth. So my mindset was bigger homes, buy one, get one free. Very urban town. I had access to the internet and the TV and the world-class restaurants. And so You combine all that, so I had become a very, very different person. And as a matter of fact, when I came as a student, I couldn't believe that in the dormitory where I was living, which was for the international students, that building is still there on Guadalupe and 28th Street. I was getting the water 24 hours, no issue with electricity. I was very good to the toilet. There were three students who were sharing it together. So none of those, I was literally shocked when I saw that. So I had become a very different person. So here's the next point that I'm going to make you. Fourth slide, next slide. Oh, let me again re-emphasize the same thing here. So there are 3.4 billion rural consumers in the world, meaning almost half of the world population is non-urban. 3 billion live in Asia and Africa. So 400 billion are in the global north, which I'll show in a moment. And then, or the 3 billion who live in Asia and Africa, 1 billion are living in South Asia. So between Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, they have 1/3 of the rural consumers. And the company that have understood that best is Unilever. So if you look at Unilever, the Unilever strategy is to go after these 1 billion rural consumers in South Asia. And if you take my course, which I'll be offering this fall, and I hope some of you are there. Uh, First time I offered this fall, I was very excited. And so you'll learn more about that. What's so big deal about the 1 billion rural consumers? Why Unilever is a phenomenal company to work for. Next slide. So this is the last one I'm going to show you. This gives you the top countries by rural population. And I want you to look at the check marks that I have. Check marks that I have is for India, and check mark that I have for is United States. Why? Because among the global south, developing countries, India has the largest rural population. And among the developed country, global north, United States has the largest rural population. So despite what we say, we have the largest rural population, and that's why the focus that these people need access to the infrastructure, the education, internet. And so, as a matter of fact, the few years ago, IC Square Institute also started focusing on these rural consumers in the United States. And they are important to us because it's not a small number, and they all vote. So they need to be heard. And there are commonalities between the rural consumers, between the India and in the United States, which I had mentioned in my book on rural consumers, that a lot can be learned, both countries can learn a lot from each other. Next slide. This is my point number 4, characteristics of global south. And I have many there. The socioeconomic classification, which I'll tell you in a minute, rural versus urban, fertility rate, lack of infrastructure, religious diversity. So it's really interesting that the majority of the global north is Christian, but almost every other religion, majority of the Christians, by the way, the Christians live in global south, majority of the Hindus live in global south, Buddhists live in global south, Muslims live in global south, and even the atheists who don't believe in anything, they're also in global south. So this religious diversity play a major, major role. Unorganized markets, there are no shopping mall. The India, for example, only 4 or 5% of the market is organized. And the most important the item here, and you can see what is going on in our country right now, that the majority of the immigrants in this country, like people me, they have come from global south. And this point, I'm going to highlight only these 3 points, and all the strategies, by the way, are based on these all these points that I have. That how global south is so different from global north. So let me first take the socioeconomic classification. Next slide. Socioeconomic classification mean that marketing research companies and many of the companies have divided a country into whatever the variables they use, they vary from country to country. Mexico uses something else, India uses something else, but they're measuring the same thing. So they actually divide them into groups called A, B, C, D, E. C is the middle. So C will be the middle class, A and B will be the above middle class, D and E will be really the lower class. So there was a very well-known scholar, the strategy scholar, C.K. Prahalad at the University of Michigan. There he wrote a very popular book called Bottom of the Pyramid. And so he was talking about the triangle that you see on my right-hand side. It's a triangle A, B, and C, and D, E. So he was talking about D and E, that why D and E is such a big market, especially in the developing countries. So no, what is going on there is that this is changing. Right now, that triangle does not look like this. I want you to look at my left-hand side, which is, you see there the C is elongated. So that means the middle class is emerging. So when we say there's a middle class in China, when we say there's a middle class in India, we are saying that these countries are not looking like a triangles anymore. And hypothesis was that the Africa is going to look like the next triangle that you see, which says AB, and the C has shrunk. That either they are rich people or they are poor people. And then, of course, there are certain countries which are inverted. So Monaco, for example, you won't find too many people with the D and E. C would be there, but little bit people to actually serve A and B. Majority may be A and B. But the point here is that the global south now is looking like what you see on the left-hand side. That is, the middle class is emerging, and that's a huge, huge story. And if I had not found that, when I went to Africa, I thought I'm going to find the second triangle, which says that there are either rich people or poor people. I won't have a story. But I documented that there is a C class, the middle class, and that's why the book became very controversial. Economists refused to review that. But if you will look at just Google that, Africa Rising, you will see the reviews written in Financial Times. And a funny thing there is that the economists refused to do that. And 2 years after that, they also had a special issue called Africa Rising. And Time Magazine did the same thing, and they copied exactly the title page from my book. So they're also talking about the middle class. But this is the big story about Global South. So Global South finally has a voice. That's why all these companies are paying attention to them. Next slide. This is the real data. Most of my data actually comes from Unilever, because Unilever has, rather than ABC, they have 20-point scale. And so what you noticed here is that you can see the pyramid shape now for India, and you can also see that how the D and E has shrunk for Kenya. Next slide. And this is the fertility rate. The reason I showed there is I want to show you that this is the unique things about Global South. You see that in Niger, 6.7, India, 2.0, USA, 1.7. We are in big trouble. The Hong Kong, 0.8. This is that how many children per mother. And so, next slide. So this is what the United States look like, meaning that we don't have too many people at the bottom. So the and to is basically the uniform. Compare that with India, which is going to look like a triangle. The next slide. So you see that India at the bottom. There are more younger people there. So that's what the India brags about, the demographic dividend. China looks like very much like the USA. So global North is in trouble because we don't have any young people, and global North, all the young people are there in global South. Next slide. So this is the last point I've going to mention. 90% of immigrants in the U.S. right now are from global South. So if you look at the on the left hand side where I have the highlighted Mexico, I highlighted because Mexico has gone above 10,000. Then China has gone above 10,000. Then you have the Korea, and so on and so forth. So notice there, when our administration says, where are the people from Norway? Norway people do not come here. Okay, so the what you see here is the majority of the population here actually is the from global South. So that's why people like me, I'm not born here, but I'm U.S. citizen. I pay taxes here. So I'm talking about people like me, the who have really made U.S. as home, and they are having a major impact because they're still connected with global South where they come from. So they're doing a lot of the things with global South. Next slide. So this is every year we have a group of African entrepreneurs come to the campus, and I give them a talk about Africa. So one of them gave me this few years ago when the statement was made that the shithole, and Zambia actually took that and started using that to market themselves to attract tourists. And by the way, Africa, if you look at my book, it shows you that despite what's happening in Africa, Africa actually gets more tourists every year than India or China. Next slide. And one of the major implication there is the remittances. And so I have highlighted on the right-hand side how much money India gets and where it's coming from, because they are the largest recipients of the remittances. So the largest, and Mexico, by the way, between the United States, Mexico is the highest. This is the bilateral. So you probably already know that. And so you have to really admire these Mexican immigrants, that how they are taking care of the family they have left behind. And then you'll see that next the money goes to the United States. And then India also gets from the UAE. So most of the money that goes to India is coming from the United States and the Gulf countries. So it's not a coincidence that when you see the prime minister, why he goes to all these countries and asks them to come and visit India, because he knows these people, money they send, they constitute 3% of the GDP of India, and is growing over time. And by the way, this is important to everybody. Mexico is not any different. Many of the countries in Africa are not any different. Some of these countries have 40%, 50% of their GDP is actually coming from the remittances. Next slide. So this is, I'm going to show you global market. So you have buyers and sellers. You have sellers coming from 14%, which is the United States right now. So look at all the trade thing which is going on. So the United States is 40%. Buyers, the deal they were making with India, which will be yourself, B, because it's an 86% country. So you can see that how the trade negotiations are going on, what product they can sell to each other. And China would be A, because China has become 14%. And so now again, the A, the United States and China, what is going on here? The European Union, which is a 14%, going to 86% B, which is India. So all these countries, you can see what is going on. Next slide. So I gave you an example here, and I'm going to move a little bit fast because of the time. This is a map of Africa. You see all the 54 countries there. So what I want to show you there is Africa, most of it, other than the Mauritius, Seychelles, they have GDP more than 10,000. Rest of them are global south. So what you noticed here is that Bimbo even have managed to go to Africa. And so then there are a whole bunch of other countries that you see here. MultiChoice is the company from South Africa. They have gone to the rest of Africa. Nando's is a company from South Africa. So the rest of them are Indian companies, Airtel, Mahindra, and so on and so forth. Next slide. And then 86% come from the 14% world, meaning that they have gone to the rich countries. And again, you see Nando's. Nando's, at least if you go to the old airport, you will see a Nando's, the fast food service. Amazing. Dr. Reddy's, a lot of generic medicines. Like, for example, my cholesterol medicine is prepared by Dr. Reddy's in India. Netflix probably has done wonders. So you can see their shows from Nigeria. Nollywood is the one of the really emerging center of movie making in the world. Uh, Next slide. This is 14% in the 86% meaning the rich country, global north and global south. Hilton, McDonald's, Coca-Cola, Uber, Walmart, all these countries are there. This is Africa, by the way, I'm showing you. So Uber is in Africa, McDonald's in Africa. Coca-Cola is the largest employer in the private sector in Africa. They were very good to me for my research. Hilton is booming there because of the tourists all that I mentioned you. You can see that all the water they have on the western side and eastern side. The next slide. Next slide is a punchline. So that's when I'm going to finish. This gives you the strategies. I'm going to highlight only 2 or 3 of them. He says, think young, because since the fertility rate is still not that bad in the global north, so you have a lot of the young people. So question there is how you can develop strategy there. So companies like Nike and few others will do very well. Look for the leapfrog, meaning that don't use the infrastructure and look for the leapfrog. That's why you see the digital payments. Digital payments, India is pushing for digital payments everywhere. Chinese are pushing for that. In Africa, Kenya has done a remarkable job. But the most important takeaway from here would be this is my last point the rules of engagement, develop with the market. It's a moving target. China of 10 years ago is very different from China of today. India of today is very different from India was 10 years ago. So they're moving target. So develop with the market. And that's probably the most important chapter that you will see in my book. This book, by the way, is 86% solution, which I was very proud. Also got the best book award from American Marketing Association. I was very humbled. I didn't think that people would like that. And so then I always believed in destiny. So I said, thank God, my destiny was to go to Hyderabad the Indian School of Business, and thanks to my daughter, it took me in a very different direction. Last slide. So think for a moment, how does wearing a sari 6 yard or 9 yard impact the design of a car? So have you ever thought of that in these Indian ladies? Islamic calendar, which changes, Ramadan doesn't come at the same time every year. So can you imagine if our Christmas was coming every different times, what will happen to us in this country? Would we have a new TV, all the soap operas and all that coming in fall? And Labola is a very old the custom in South Africa, and this is the boys actually have to commit certain number of the cows they call it, but these days not the cows are equivalent money, and they have to give the bride's family, and this has caused many, especially when you have very high unemployment. So question there is what are the social implications of this custom, and they cannot change that because they love it. I mean, this is just like the Dowry system in India. The Indian government tried, but still they cannot get rid of that. Labola. So these are the many of the cultural takeaways that you will see in my course and you will see in my books. That how 86% is the global South is different from the global North. Next slide. So I want to thank you. The word that I want you to see there is consumer safari. This word I stole from the Unilever in Zimbabwe and Harare. So they use this word when they go to visit the consumers' homes. And so what I did was in the 70, 80 countries, I was on a consumer safari. I met God knows how many companies. I did so many interviews. I went to the places, the slums even where I was not supposed to go. But I came back as a very enlightened person, and I have a lot of faith, especially in the mothers. If you ask me what was one takeaway that I learned from the 70 countries, which is that there's no substitute for a mother. These mothers, these women are so strong. Thank God for these women. This planet is still alive. They are holding this planet. So thank you so much. And sorry I went fast, but do we have any time? Or?
Well, I think we have time for at least one question, and we've had some really good ones. So let's see. I think you answered some of them. Let me go up a little. All right, well, we have a couple that are sort of related. So let's start with this one. As the Global South gains more weight on the international stage, how do you think this will reshape strategic marketing decisions, strategic market decisions for global companies?
Well, I think this is exactly the point of the course. Question there is that how do we have to change our mindset? The how do we actually? Let me give you an example. So this morning I heard that and this can goes to Africa or any other country. This morning I heard that India has come up with their own AI, and I kept on thinking, what's so big about that? So the reason and it's called Soramnam or something, and they're actually showcasing that in the conference. This AI can actually read in 13 different languages, and the same text, by the way. And they're hoping to actually increase that to actually 30 plus more. So what you see there is that this diversity is so high, the income diversity is so different. But the first time I have seen where these countries have been democratized, meaning that both the rich people and the poor people have access to the same product, which is mobile phone. So my driver these days that I was hiring in India or in South Africa, they were all watching YouTube. So can you imagine that they are watching movies on YouTube? So this is this global companies have to pay attention. And best example again, I can give you the Unilever. When Unilever hires a person, this person has to go and spend 6 months in a rural area. It doesn't matter whether it's a rookie or it's a senior executive, they have to spend 6 months in the rural areas. And because they need to understand this rural market. 3.4 billion rural consumers, 2.5 billion do not have access to a toilet. Many of these women don't even get a sanitation pad. They go in the toilet movie. That was the point there also. These women go at 4 o'clock in the morning to the fields to relieve themselves. If they have to go during the daytime, you can forget it. So how do you market these products to these countries? How do you understand these countries? Because this is not business as usual. So that's the whole objective of the course that we have, that how do we tap this market?
Super, thank you. I think maybe one more. I'm very curious about this question. What are the unique economic development opportunities offered by markets populated by rural middle classes in developing states, given today's geopolitical context? Can you comment on that
No, this is a very good question. As
succinctly?
a matter of fact, in my book, The Rise of Rural Consumers, I have actually given you the socioeconomic classification ABCD categories for rural areas. Uh, not everybody is rich in urban areas. I mean, there have slums. Not everybody is poor in the rural areas, meaning that there is a middle class. Let me give you an example. So my best example actually came from Thailand. So I went to the northeast part, which is very rural agriculture. Is right on the border with the what is that country next door? Oh my God, I'm forgetting the name. And so I walked into these rural areas, and they had a what they call the co-op. Co-op means that the rural people all actually put in their money and they bought certain shares, and they would go to the big cities and they would bring the product. So I all of a sudden I kept on looking at this L'Oreal product. I said, why L'Oreal is in this small tiny village? I picked it up, and it was fake. Then first thing that occurred to me, I said, what the hell is wrong with the L'Oreal? Why would the ambition of a rural woman be any different from the desires or the aspirations of a urban girl in Bangkok? They would also like to dye their hair. They also want to look nice. They also want to take care of their skin. How come these people have not paid attention to that? And trust me, I have a picture of that. And you will look at the package, you will be fooled that this is you thought that this is a L'Oreal product, but it's not. No, that's also dangerous. We don't know what chemicals they have put in there. Picture was exactly the lady from Europe or North America, the typical the models that they have. So rural consumers are a huge market. If we can figure out what to do with them, and most important, their aspirations are not any different. Whether they are ladies who wants to take care of their skin, they don't like the dry skin, take care of their hair, and many of these countries, hair is that they're most important. It's called the crown jewel. For example, in the Middle East. So why the rural consumers in Morocco, the women be any different from the urban people, girls in Casablanca? Why the urban ladies in Cairo will be different from any other rural areas on the Niles? So the huge opportunity. So that's what my objective when I wrote a separate book, The Rise of Rural Consumers. I went to the 10 largest countries, 10 countries, the largest rural population. There were 7 in Asia and 3 in Africa, again with the help of Unilever, Coca-Cola, Procter& and Gamble, and so many others. So this is a very good question. We cannot ignore 3.4 billion 3 billion consumers, almost half of that in the developing countries.
Wow. Okay. I think you win the prize for succinct speed talking. In addition,
So,
providing us with a fascinating presentation. Thank you so much, Vijay Mahajan. And I want to mention that this course that we've been referring to, if you're an undergraduate, marketing 372T and IB 372T. And if you're an MBA, it's marketing 382 and IB 395. This is a course, it's the same course, am I right?
yes, yes,
And it's
yes.
available to both undergraduates and MBAs. And if you're interested in this topic, look for that course during registration. I know I'm planning to sign up. I think that you've given us all a great deal to think about, and what a wonderful enhancement to McCombs course offerings, offering this new course. It's only been offered once. So
No, thank you so much. And MBA course is also cross-listed next fall with the LBJ, the College of Communication, and South Asia Institute.
all right. Vijay Mahajan, thank you so very much.